Hello and welcome to Muffin Men Sprint 3 screencast to show functionality. So to start this video, I'm going to kind of rewind, recap, showing some work we still did in the sprint but was left over from Sprint 2 or was an improvement on work we did in Sprint 2. So to start off, I will discuss the bag tag report, which was great by Dr. Kirhana standards. The only thing we needed to change was deleting that client ID field, which you can see is now deleted. So this report has been revised. And the next item is the bag packing report. A few things have been changed here. It is now filtered by weekly cycle ID. Here it's 2, just for sake of example, but of course you can go and click edit and change this to 1, or in the future if they add more weekly cycle IDs it can be changed as needed. And then for those weekly IDs we have all the records here, but they're bucketed in household type, which is also a new thing from the previous sprint. So the explanation for this is that Brad had some similar groupings in his reports. Oh, excuse me, this is the delivery routes, and we would like the packing lists. Okay, here we are. So bag packing. You can see here that there are subtotals for 1 to 2 person households, 3 to 4, and 5 to 6 person, and also a total bags. Well, we couldn't really figure out how to total bags since we don't have any fields or a record of how many bags each household has, but we do know the household count. So I bucketed these by small being 1 to 2, medium being 3 to 4, and large being 5 to 6, which is how Brad had it. If he wants to see kind of subtotals of how many households or records he has in each type, he can just hide the details for this instance of the report. Of course, he can show the details again and really drill down into all the required fields that we have listed here. So that's just one difference between his report and our report. Again, recapping on some improvements from Sprint 2, now carried over into Sprint 3. We have the delivery route report, which is now filtered by weekly cycle ID as it should have been. So it's, again, set on 2 just for example's sake. And then the routes have been grouped by route. So Route 2, Route 4, those are the only 2 that appear in this report. And so those can be, again, kind of subtotaled down. So Brad and team could see how many, households they have in each route for this instance of the report, but then they can show all the details that are required, like last name, first name, address, delivery directions, and so on. 2 notes on this. So Brad has a space for driver, which we've included, but we don't have any data about drivers in our system yet, so that's blank for now. Also, you can see here that he has some information that's located in client visit details table right now. So he has total number of containers and whether the food was delivered or not, or if the number of containers returned. We were unable to link clients in the master detail relationship to the client visit details table, which I will explain shortly. So it turns out that in Salesforce, a custom object, which client is a custom object, can only have a maximum of 2 master-client relationships. which are needed if you want to build reports, like we have to build reports, where you see the little tab that says client with delivery route with background. So a custom object can only have a maximum of 2, which client has, so we were unable to change this relationship, which is a lookup right now, into a master detail relationship. So we can't get that information communicated in a report. So again, this is the same domain class diagram we've had. We just changed these relationships to better suit our needs. We changed the type of relationship, not anything major, just changed it from lookup to master detail. But we cannot do that with client visit and client. Salesforce will not allow it. There is apparently a way to build cross-object formula fields, which could be a way that we can get that information in that Brad has, this food delivered and the number of containers returned. That's, again, in our client visit table right now. But we were unable to figure out how to do that yet. We're still all watching videos and trying to get more training on maybe how to figure that out. So that's something that could be tabled for even the next sprint to kind of add those columns in if we're able to figure it out. So one more recap for the previous, from Sprint 2 into Sprint 3, some improvements. This is the meal planning report, which is filtered by delivery day and weekly cycle ID, which is different from last time. So this is what it should be filtered down by. We don't have any data that is delivered on Tuesdays, so it's set to Monday right now, and weekly cycle ID is 1. Then kind of last name of the household count, bag only, all the required information is showed here. Another difference is we added some of these grand totals. So the total household count across every household in this report, and then total households that are bag only, and total meal counts for this instance of the report. So Brad, in his current reports, he has total clamshells, total servings of protein and veggies, and total households. So we don't have clamshell data, and we don't have protein and veggies separated, so we don't have these totals. And you cannot summarize a text field in Salesforce, so we couldn't count households. It seemed counterintuitive to add the client ID into this report and then to summarize it that way in order to only count unique households. So instead, we counted the total household count, so they'll kind of know, a total of clients that they're serving. And then we totaled their bag only, because that could be some important information to know, in addition to the total meal count, which we think would be important when planning a meal. So those are just some of the improvements we've made from the previous sprint. And now moving on to new functionality from Sprint 3, our client visit table, which we actually added, in the first sprint. We had this in here. We didn't have any data in it, so we did add the sample data in this sprint. This is what the adding field looks like. So, you have required fields of the number of containers delivered and returned, and the delivery date. You look up which client you want to link this to, etc. So that's what adding a client visit would look like. And then we have all of these client visits that we have added in. You can just see some examples. Of course, they're sorted by client ID right now, but you can see some of the delivery event notes, etc. So we have the client visits in there, the whole crud. You can read them, you can update them if you press edit, and you can also delete them, which I will not show right now, but I'll make a dummy one that we can delete. So I'll just add something really quickly. We'll say we want to follow up. We'll say that we delivered it Monday, delivered 5 containers. They've been very bad and have returned no containers during this event. We'll save it, and then we can delete this right away. I'll say OK, and it's gone. That was client visit 25. We look for all of them. I don't see a 25, so there we go. We have read, updated, deleted, and created a record in client visit. Moving on to the net loss containers report, which we've built here, being grouped by last name and then first name, because you never know if a client, they could have similar last names but be different households. So this report, the net loss containers report, is over a range of time. So this is set to last month. And then we have the 5 records that match that month, and the total containers they returned, the total containers that were delivered to them, and then the net containers, which is delivered minus return. It's automatically calculated. And then we have a container return rate, again automatically calculated, which is return divided by delivered. So this guy has returned 100%. Hairy Dog only 75. This person hasn't returned any, so 0%. And you can see in this case a better indicator might be their -2 total net containers calculation. And then we also have a grand total of the total net containers for this report, so it kind of shows how far in the hole they are for this instance. So for these records in this month, this is how many containers they're missing. Yes, so that shows the summaries. You can also show details of kind of delivery instances, but there's really no reason to kind of show like just per delivery, but we don't really use that much for this particular report. Doesn't make much sense. So we keep it at this date range and then the total return, delivered, and net containers calculations. Moving on to cumulative client visit notes. So here, these notes are pulled for a specific client. There is no date range. So we've zoomed in on Hairy Dog here to show some, especially delivery event notes. That's the most important part. So this is sorted chronologically from the most far back to the most recent. And then whether the delivery was missed or there's a follow-up. And the delivery event dates, of course, I mentioned before. This is filtered by client first name and last name. Of course, this needs to be changed depending on what client you're actually looking at, which we can do pretty easily. Let's see if I remember anybody's name. I think we have someone named Dude in this database. No, we do not. Let's see. Who do we have? All right, sorry about that. I was close, but I couldn't remember. So Evan Dude is who we have. So if we run this report, we see, again, this is a different person, but sorted chronologically. Follow-up was, in fact, in this case, the last one. And then you see the delivery event notes. Unfortunately, he had a stroke and then went to a nursing home. So you can see all the notes on this report. And that pretty much wraps up the functionality that we've developed in this sprint. All right, so just to recap, At the beginning of this video, I reviewed some of the reports like the delivery route report, meal planning report, bag packing list, bag tags. Actually, those are all the reports from Sprint 2 that we made improvements on in Sprint 3. Those improvements included total rows as well as the correct filters. Then I moved on to the functionality of this sprint, which included showing the functionality of CRUD in the client visits table, and then reviewing the net loss containers report as well as the cumulative client visit notes report. According to our sprint planning that we revised from deliverable 4, we are on track. And according to directions given in class, we're on track as far as what we've completed in each sprint. Of course, there's always the issue of figuring out that extra information from client visits, how to get that in reports, since we can't do a master detail relationship with client. So we're still trying to figure out how to do that cross custom object formula, if that's even possible at this point. So that's something we're going to have to carry on to the next sprint and see if we can figure it out. And other than that, though, we are on track. We might even be a little bit ahead. We recalculated our velocity, and it's 1 point higher. So our average velocity in practice, derived from sprint 1 and 2, is 28 points. We estimated it to be 27. So we may just be a couple points ahead, but we're doing good. We're on track. We just have that minor issue of that, constraint of Salesforce where you can't have another master detail relationship. But yeah, so in this video, we've demonstrated some improvements from Sprint 2 carried over to Sprint 3, as well as the functionality of Sprint 3. We are on track with the exception of that one extra information / Salesforce constraint issue that we're having. But other than that, everything is functioning properly. We have all the reports in place, and we feel good about where we are. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in class.